and a warm welcome to all our friends who've joined in. My name is Apulak, as Rebecca so kindly put in. And cloud is an area that excites me a lot. I have traveled this journey with all of you for the past almost 16, 18 years now. I saw it grow literally in front of all of us. I've been part of several projects where we saw how cloud came in, how the adoption grew, and it's only fair to say that it's traversed a long distance. So today it's to understand how it singularly ties very strongly with the entire concept of digital transformation. So my attempt here is to walk you through how cloud and multi-cloud in particular connects with digital transformation, and what are some of the areas that we have to look into, some of the challenges that we typically see, and how we mitigate that, right? But before we do that, it's important to take a step back and understand how digital transformation also has evolved, right? As you all know, no prize for guessing here, when we talk about digital transformation, essentially it's a process, right? It's not an ad hoc project that we work upon, right? So typically in the initial phase of digital transformation, as we call the phase one, we started talking about digitization of the records that we keep, which is why the first phase is what we call as the system of records, right? Then came in, and what we typically saw the last couple of years was the area of system of collaboration, and the pandemic gave us the system of engagement. There's a slight difference between system of collaboration and engagement, because I think system of engagement was much more deeper, because we understood how business continuity is so important to keep the lights on, considering what we went through. Hopefully, we are way past the pandemic, and we auguring and ushering in a new phase of growth for the world, and India in particular, right? So I think why this is important for us to understand is what is expected of digital transformation from organizations has changed. So the new and the current avatar of digital transformation is what we call as a system of business productivity and outcomes. Because I think this is where we converge business outcomes, solutions, with how digital transformation is helping that. And some of us who have tracked this also know when we talk about digital transformation, we are actually talking about data transformation. Across this, if you see, the common thread which connects phase 1 to 4 is how data got transferred from point 0 to point 1, and what it does for us as organizations. So I think another way of looking this transformation journey, and instead of calling it just digital transformation, I think it's right and it's fair to say that we're actually also talking about data transformation. But having said so, it's important that we understand how transformation has affected from a pre-pandemic phase and a post-pandemic phase. So if you see, not that all of things have changed, right? On your left is what you see the pre-pandemic phase, whereas on your right you see the post-pandemic phase. For instance, when we spoke about pre-pandemic, issues around lack of support from management, employee pushback, reluctance to cultural mindset, lack of digital transformation and change management strategy. Because you've got to understand, most of us, and we did a survey at Teal about a couple of months back, and we've shared that with most of our friends from the fraternity, wherein what we saw was, and you have to understand this, because we are at the cusp when a lot of things are changing and happening for the first time. Why I say this is because in a pre-pandemic phase, almost 90 to 95% of us used to go to our office, right? Whereas in the pandemic phase, it was just the reverse. 90 to 95% of us were working out of our homes, with only barely around 4 to 5% going to office premises. Now, in today's world, and I'm sure you'll concur with me, it's very balanced, right? Roughly around 40 to 45% people go to office, 50 to 55% are still working from homes. The numbers may change, but it will not change to what it was in the pre-pandemic phase. That's a clear indication. We clearly know the fact that people will work in a hybrid environment. And hence, the requirements and challenges of digital transformation, as you see, are different. Yes, there are budget constraints. They were there earlier, but if you see, there is a dip. Earlier 58% spoke about budget constraints. Now, around less than 50% talk about budget constraints. But what is important is the charting an effective digital transformation strategy, which involves people, processes, and technology. Adapting a very clear customer requirement specificity, which goes beyond the pandemic, and very important, like I said, managing your cyber security concerns. Now, this is a point I'd like to espouse more here, because in the world of pre-pandemic, when most of us were going to office, right, the perimeter had to be secured, right? And here, the perimeter was largely our office premises. Now, we are in a very in an environment where we're spread out, right? There is the data center protect, which works probably in your colo or in your capacity where you're working. But many of us, right, work out of our homes or through remote locations. Hence, the touch points or the end points that are there are on multiple locations. And hence, managing security becomes paramount important and is a challenge, which I would not say that we have completely conquered that, because security is something that I think nobody would be so confident to say that we've completely conquered it, because we've had so many challenges in the last 2 years. Some stories, fairly big, without taking names, that I'm sure all of you are aware, have taken place in the last week to 2 as well, right? So these are some of the ways we see a deflection of what are the kind of challenges that transformation processes are trying to resolve, right? And as a result, the priorities of people like you, people who manage, the IT department, people who are responsible for business transformation, digital transformation initiative at your respective ends, would concur, because these data points that we share with all of you have been collated by, regularly conducting surveys, reaching out to IT decision makers like you, and this is what we conclude. So if you see the first two, very clearly we speak about digital customer experience and we talk about employee engagement and experience. Interesting point, isn't it? Because we're talking about digital transformation primarily focusing about the stakeholders. Stakeholders, again, getting distributed within internal stakeholders, which is your employees, and your external stakeholders, which are your customers. So I think the pandemic told us, the customer is the king, yes, but so is the employee. And I think very largely they work in tandem. It's a very old adage, and I'd like to add here, it is said that, if you treat your employees as gold, they'll treat your customers as diamonds. And I think it's come so true. The pandemic took away a lot, and we only have a lot of sadness in our heart about that, but it taught us a lot also. And it kind of worked as a catalyst for many transformation initiatives. But the third point, and a point which I like to singularly focus today, and probably the rest of the discussion in my presentation and a stellar panel that we have post this, which speaks about the very important role of IT infrastructure and cloud transformation in resolving all of this. Be it your business continuity, things related to compliance and security, digitization of the entire supply chain, or automating processes. Somewhere I think the entire IT fabric, the IT infrastructure also has evolved, right? And a cornerstone, and as I said, in my years of experience as an analyst, cloud also has traversed a long distance, right? There was initially, hesitation. People used to be skeptical of putting their, mission-critical applications on the cloud, but they tested the waters by putting some non-mission critical applications on, say, on a public cloud environment if they required, measuring the GRC. Some of them put it on a on-premise environment, and so on and so forth. And then eventually, it depends on the kind of organization you represent, the segment of the industry that you belong to, and the kind of GRC requirement that your industry requires. So for instance, what we typically see is, for most mid-market to large organizations, there is a clear focus that, the future of cloud is definitely hybrid. I know I say this and I'm repeating this, which we would have heard for the umpteen number of times this time, right? So, but what is important to understand is, while hybrid cloud is extremely important, but with hybrid cloud, it also, with maturity of public cloud adoption, I think multi-cloud is here to stay and here to stay for a really long run. But having said so, it's important to understand A, why multi-cloud, and B, what pushes that. So if you see on top, we kind of talk about the tenets, the requirements of businesses when we talk about any digital transformation initiative. For instance, you want to improve your business agility, right? You want to enhance the customer experience, right? You want to improve your employee experience. So it's kind of resonating with the CIO priorities, and focus on business continuity. You want to improve the operational efficiencies, automating processes, and last but not least, very importantly, focus on data protection, privacy, and security. Why multi-cloud here is important is because it kind of, maps very beautifully the requirements of today's modern business scenarios with the tenets of multi-cloud, because it helps you to build and deploy new age applications. It helps you secure access to applications and data from any device and across any location. It helps you automate and integrate and modernize data, and it kind of gives you a safeguard across framework, across platforms. So, and for us to believe that this is the authentic future, almost 75% of enterprises that we spoke to believe that multi-cloud is critical, for the success of their digital transformation initiatives, which is why, this particular presentation that I'm sharing with all of you, we kind of chose a title, how multi-cloud and digital transformation are pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. You get these two right, so a lot kind of follows suit eventually, right? And I think the future is fairly strong. With, when I say 67%, we're roughly talking about 3 out of 4 organizations seem to suggest that they have already embarked or about to embark on their multi-cloud strategy in 2023, which we are just about around the corner, right? So I think multi-cloud is definitely a de facto standard when you talk about digital transformation. But like any technology solution, product or service, there are certain challenges we need to manage. And our discussion today kind of focuses around that. It's a revisit to questions that you would have heard across several discussions. We'll try to uncover them today to our best ability. So if you see, and I'm sure you'll probably agree with me on some of these elements. So if you see, these are some of the challenges, that organizations like you face when we talk about the challenges that you encounter with your multi-cloud strategy. Let's focus on the top 3 here. We're talking about complexity in integration and interoperability among various cloud platforms. We're talking about difficulty in managing and accounting cloud costs and managing multiple vendors and service providers. 78%, 72%, 68%. Having said so, it's not that the others don't matter. We always know, the challenges of migrating legacy applications, from a on-premise environment to a cloud environment is never an easy task. Considering that they have been there in your system of records for so many years, So if you see, this is where I spoke about, the element of being a jigsaw puzzle. So you are considering a constituent movement which was part of a system of records becoming a part of a system of processes and business improvement, right? Which is where the challenges also clearly come across. And then you always have issues around security, a lack of robust cloud migration tools, and lack of in-house IT expertise to round it off. But while I'm very conscious that we have a regular time frame to discuss this, I thought on focusing today's presentation on the first 2, because I see a lot of challenges happening in and around this. So my focus today, A, would be around cloud integration and interoperability challenges in our multi-cloud environment. So I'm sure for most of you practitioners, this is an area that you've been struggling with. But I thought of, let's take a step back and dig deeper to understand. So when we talk about cloud interoperability, what are some of the challenges and why are they, right? This is again fact-driven, number-driven to substantiate our and validate what we say. So as you can see, 72% of organizations whom we surveyed for this seem to say that the sheer variety of data integration and cloud APIs that are required without any standards, that kind of lets a challenge. Because, and let's face it, when we talk about any cloud adoption strategy, we're talking about again data, right? And data which is coming across on a structured format, unstructured format, and having no standard benchmarks will have its own sheer challenges, right? Then you have quite challenges around the fact that there are issues about portability of data from one platform to the other, right? And then the fact that every cloud platform needs the requisite experience and expertise. So necessary investments in your workflows is a challenge. And these are challenges that we understand. And last but not least, I think no discussion around digital transformation or multi-cloud will ever be complete if we don't speak about the horizontal security challenges, right? And the question is so this is not what I'm saying about security is not new, but it's important to understand, how do we share the responsibility of security? Is it the provision of the company, or is it the provision of the service provider? Is it the provision of the system integrator? And that's where a lot of contention usually happens. So some of the ways to mitigate, it's important at thinking that while we espouse upon the challenges, we also kind of give you certain ballparks of how to manage them. Obviously, this would need a more thorough and detailed session to take each of them, but I'd like to just at least touch today on some of the areas that we feel helps in doing that, right? I think this is one area that I've seen visible traction is, consider using, published adapters, to port applications from one platform to another. This is an area we've seen significant traction in recent years, and going forward, this with the necessary standardization tools will make this entire movement so much more easier, right? The second, obviously, we speak about cloud ops and cloud management platform, because somewhere I think, having a singular glass view of your multi-cloud environment, because somewhere if you take a step back, we talk about, a cloud environment, there were certain tenets like, ease of use, pay-per use, so on and so forth. You were moving from a CapEx environment to an OpEx environment. But with the sheer volume of data that is handled across a multitude of cloud platforms, it's very important that you have a very robust CMP platform. A CMP platform essentially gives you visibility to your multi-cloud architecture and kind of helps you knob through how you manage a particular application platform to the other, right? And last but not least, very important to work on open cloud standards, which are available to not only mitigate risk but also manage your cost environments, right? And somewhere, like I said, I think with the sheer volume of work that we do, at times it is important, at times it becomes a necessity to probably take the capabilities of a managed service provider, because so what it helps you do is effectively propagate and focus, help you focus on the business productivity standards that you need to work on as a CIO, and let the day-to-day activities of a multi-cloud decision making by taken care by a managed service provider, right? Going to the second part, this is a point that I haven't seen too many discussions around, but I feel it's a top concern with most organizations. But like I said, if you remember, one of the key tenets of cloud was to go from a CapEx environment to an OpEx environment, and the ease of use, right? But as I said, with the sheer complexity of a multi-cloud architecture, managing costs has become a challenge. You who have billing cycles which vary from one to the other. There is complexity across multiple cloud platforms. There are issues about over provisioning because you're never too safe to know how much you use. So you end up spending far too much than you really require, right? And then the third is of the conflicting cloud strategy that you have across various departments. So to a certain extent, we're talking about the entire challenge of shadow IT as we speak, because shadow IT is an area that a lot of you, I'm sure, are battling with. Shadow IT not only gives you challenges only in terms of security, it also holds up challenges in terms of cost. Because there are, in fact, I've had so many conversations with the CIOs wherein they say, I was surprised to know that the fact that one particular workload or an application went to cloud without my knowledge. And that kind of rang a bell. How come that's happening? Because apparently one particular CXO took a decision that they need to go the cloud way without the due consultation or due diligence with the CIO. And that leads to conflicting ideologies, management challenges, and cost is definitely a big issue, right? And all of this is leading to decentralized and complex visibility, adding up cloud costs, right? So how do we manage that? No easy way to that, obviously. And what you also need to realize and remember is, yes, cloud helps you scale up, right? Cloud gives you the flexibility to grow and reap the benefits of economies of scale. But what you need to understand is you have to also make sure that there's no vendor lock-in that you're getting into. And secondly, more importantly, how future ready is your cloud environment? You may be adaptive enough to manage the issues and challenges that are there for your organization today and maybe for near term. But how do you see as an organization, say 10 years down the line, right? With so many new parameters coming from, say, governance, risk, compliance, ever-evolving customer requirements. Now we also have a lot of companies focusing on environment, sustainability and governance. So I think it's important that we effectively manage that. We at Teal kind of came up with this six-point program, which kind of helps you optimize the cost. Starts with understand, and I think if you see all the 6 points somewhere, it kind of hones one very important process, which is you have to keep a track of your cost, right? But it's easier said than done. How do you do that? So there is a method to that madness. So you definitely need to have a robust tool that helps you give a view to your cost and a unified process to do that. Secondly, you need to have a deep understanding of your organization cloud requirement. Because at the end of it, if you've been using continually cloud platforms, you'll see a pattern emerge. And that pattern will be in the form of analytics, right? And that kind of gives you a sense of direction as to where do I manage my cloud? And in a way, it gives you visibility in cost as well, right? So that leads to dynamically right scale the cloud resources, right? And also, how do I very judiciously use the unused resources, because which was part of your provisioning process, right? So this kind of works in tandem. So if you have all these 6 processes in place, like I said, may not be watertight, but absolutely the right way to kind of counter the challenges that you have with cloud optimization and cost optimization. So this is probably where I'll wrap it up, but I'd like to leave you with some points. No means am I suggesting these are recommendations, because you're far too experienced to suggest a set of recommendations, but probably consider this as a checklist which helps you abide by and manage your cloud cost, your interoperability challenges, and without getting into vendor lock-ins, right? First of all, we know that every workload needs to be first assessed. Does it qualify to be on cloud? and does it ensure that that there is cross-platform interoperability, right? To do that, it's very important, like I said, to have a robust multi-cloud management platform. The best starting point is to spend your money on and your resources on having a good cloud management platform, right? And last but not least, very, very importantly, how future ready is your entire endeavor to make all of this possible. In between, without repeating myself, I've covered that in my presentation. Security, a proactive approach to cloud migration and keeping your costs in check will help you have a much more stable cloud environment, which effectively helps you reach what your business set out for. So that's it from my end, and I'm looking forward to my panel post this. Thank you so much for your time.